Hi, you are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donica Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us.
Hello and welcome to another exciting year of In the Ladies Room with Dr. Donica. Today we are entering season 3 of our podcast. We're almost at our 100th episode, and today we're going to talk about truth time. How many of you, or I should say how many of us, made a New Year's resolution to lose the same X number of pounds that you resolved to lose last year, the year before, or even 10 years ago? And of those of you who did, how many of you are still sticking to that New Year's resolution a whole week into 2020? Well, at this time last year, we spoke with singer Rochelle Sanford, who lost over 100 pounds and was featured in the People magazine We Lost 100 Pounds issue. Our mantra for this year is hindsight is 2020 vision. With that, we can see clearly that diets come and go and the scale needle swings as you drop pounds and then gain them back again. But what if there was a more permanent weight loss solution? And I'm not talking about gastric bypass surgery, but I'm also not talking about another fad diet based on deprivation, restriction, guilt, shame, blame, but a holistic system for shedding pounds and maintaining your weight while eating healthfully and nurturing your body, which is what food is supposed to do. Well, today that's what we're going to talk about with the author of The Permanent Weight Loss Plan, which comes out tomorrow. This is Dr. Janice Asher, and with her co-author, Fulbright Open Research Fellow Rivera, she reveals from their own firsthand experiences that it's not just about the food you eat or don't eat, it's about a mindset and lifestyle change. And I am not the only doctor who has said, I will get my Nobel Prize when I figure out how to get people to do that, or maybe invent a pill that can do that. But until then, we have to listen to our experts. And after collectively losing over 170 pounds and maintaining their weight for years, Janice and Jay share scientific evidence, personal experiences, and practical insights on how you can successfully reframe your relationship with food. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's a gazillion diet books on the market. Why do we need another one? Well, Dr. Janice Asher's book is the only one I know about where the authors themselves actually lost over 170 pounds combined and kept it off for years. Moreover, Dr. Asher is a board-certified OBGYN. She served as the Director of Women's Health at the Student Health Service at the University of Pennsylvania from 1980 to 2018. So I'm guessing she knows all about the Freshman 15. And she began the MILE program, the Mindful Intuitive Living and Eating program. And that's what we are going to talk about today in the ladies' room. Welcome, Dr. Asher.
Thank you, Danica. So nice to talk with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So educate me. Start at the beginning. How did you begin your own personal journey? And also, how much weight of that weight did you lose and how much did Jay lose?
Oh, I'm a very bit player in this story. I lost only 30 pounds.
That's
and
significant.
30 pounds, yes, but it's a small amount compared to Jay, who lost 140 while she was in college. I think the important part of my weight loss that's unusual is that I didn't gain it back. Mm-hmm. And when I figured out how to do that, and then figured out how to help my patients do that, and then saw that I was successful, I was pretty excited. Mm-hmm. So you can go with me to collect that Nobel Prize.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Although I have to wear 30 pounds before I can fit into a fabulous gown to wear to the ceremony.
No, you don't.
Anyway, so first tell me, how did you and Jay meet? And I know Jay is a pseudonym. She's not using, it's her pen name.
Jay was an undergraduate student at the University of Pennsylvania, where I worked. She was a senior when we met, and she had already lost all her weight.
Okay.
She came to me for an unrelated reason. I looked at her chart and said, this is extraordinary. How did you do that? And she said, oh, just simple diet and exercise. I think if I can do it, other people can do it. And I'm thinking of writing a book. I said to her, I'm thinking of writing a book. After you graduate, Would you like to write a book together? And we did. It
That's
took us more than 3 years to write the book, part of which is because it is based on science. There are more than 350 references.
wow.
But we did it, and it'll be published tomorrow.
Yay. And so one of my New Year's resolutions is to finish reading the book. I actually started it, actually lost sleep last night trying to finish, but I didn't get there. I have to confess that in 2019, my big discovery was audiobooks. So now I'm spoiled by being able to listen to books as opposed to reading them. Do you have an audiobook of the version?
No, but you can speak with my publisher.
And I would be happy to narrate it. Absolutely. Okay, so tell us how the MILE program began.
I'm going to go one step back from that,
Okay.
which is that I never had a weight problem until I was 40 years old, after the birth of my second baby. And looking back, I realize how not only unhelpful I was, but potentially even harmful I was toward my patients, giving them the usual doctor party line: calories in, calories out. You'd be healthier if you lost some weight. You need to move more, eat less, blah, blah, blah. My patients already knew all that. So all I was doing was making them feel more disappointed in themselves. When I myself gained weight, I couldn't lose it. I would try a diet, it would work, until it didn't. I was like everyone else. And finally, it dawned on me that I would never successfully lose weight by hating myself. And that was the key for me, that I was going to reframe all my efforts into one of taking care of myself. That's all it would be. I was going to take care of myself physically and emotionally. By doing that, each day I could have a success. I wasn't allowing myself to beat myself up. And I asked my patients and my readers, how well has that worked out for you? Right? So once I figured I wasn't allowed to do that, it was really not difficult. It was a challenge.
I think teaching people how not to beat themselves up might actually be harder than teaching them to lose weight. So
I agree.
how do you stop beating yourself up, especially when you're a professional woman and you've just had your second child in your 40s, and I imagine you're working full time and handling all the stresses of the second shift. And I actually, I think back to delivering my second child, because today is the 25th birthday of my second child.
Happy birthday, second
So
child.
it's happy giving birth day. And that was, it's very easy to blame those pregnancy pounds.
Yes.
Or for younger women, it's very easy to blame the freshman 15.
Sure.
For many women, they love to blame birth control pills, because we think about the time span since then as though it was not that long ago, but it was 25 years.
And we do blame all those things, but Donica, in the end, who do we end up blaming?
Us.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I needed to figure out a way to explore that with my patients. That's when I started the MILE program, to see if what I had done for myself would be applicable to other people, especially people who were more than 40 years younger than I. So I enlisted a nutritionist and therapist, and we recruited students. I went through every chart where there was a diagnosis of someone who was overweight. And then I looked for ones who had self-identified, because I didn't want to send out a letter to someone saying, your doctor said you were overweight. I wanted someone to say, I have this issue, I want help with it. And I reached out to them. And if they joined us, they joined us. And it would be 6 weeks, although many of them came back for successive workshops, where we would talk about what their issues were with food. We never asked people to weigh themselves. We didn't even talk about recommendations for what they should eat. We didn't talk about calories, just about what they saw as their issues. And that's where we began.
And was this a group therapy thing, or this was just one-on-one appointments?
Group. And it wasn't therapy. It was therapy.
What did we used to call, what did we used to have call those groups in the 1970s? Oh, consciousness
raising. Yes, my mother used to go to those and then leave early so she could make dinner for my father. We called these support groups. And the bond.
And then I think in the 1980s, we just called it a coffee clutch.
Could be. I think I was, I missed the 80s. I'm just working all the
sleeping the whole time.
Didn't have time for a coffee clutch. But the common denominator for almost every student who did the workshop was shame.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't foreseen that, although looking back now, of course I could. So we decided that to deal with shame, being hard on yourself, being overly self-critical, was the worst thing to do. So we tried to move ourselves into a different space entirely, where it was one, again, of taking care of oneself in the best way we could, emotionally and physically, and see if eating in a healthy way followed that. And for almost everyone, it did. And I only had follow-up for 1 year on each of these people. I'm trying to think. I think it was 85% continued to lose weight. 85%, Doc.
That's incredible.
Extraordinary.
Now, of course, these are students at the University of Pennsylvania, highly motivated,
correct,
young,
correct,
and generally pretty healthy.
Correct, and had access to healthy foods, easy access to healthy foods. Having said that, I'm not young. I'm going to be 70 years old next month.
Wow.
I'm not even a little young, but I haven't gained back the weight.
That's awesome.
And I feel like, Jay, if I can do this, I know other people can do it. I have serious medical problems, serious skeletal problems that affect my ability to exercise. No, I haven't gained back the weight. I just adapt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us what the hallmarks are. Everybody is poised with their pens, or if you're driving, please don't take notes. You can listen to this again, I promise. But tell us the hallmarks of the MILE program, and tell us first what it stands for. MILE.
It stands for mindful, intuitive. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. Living and eating. The intuitive part was a suggestion of the nutritionist, who A, believes in intuitive eating, and B, we needed another vowel. The acronym.
So you had to buy a vowel from Vanna.
Well, I know my letters too, but I don't look as good as Vanna does. Having said that, for me, what intuitive eating means is a lot of grilled cheese sandwiches chased down by limitless Hershey's Kisses. So intuitive eating doesn't work for me. And that's one of the points of what we talk about is, if it's healthy, it doesn't matter. It's kind of the message I give to all my patients. I really don't care what you weigh. I do care that you eat in a healthy way and move in a healthy way. I care that you get enough sleep, that you have people you love, that you go to the dentist twice a year, and you have safe sex. But I don't care what you weigh. And that's where I stand today and where the MILE group took us. If I may, I'd like to go back one step, or 6 days to be precise, to New Year's resolutions that you brought up at the very beginning. I have a blog, and I posted the other day that I think the stupidest New Year's resolution is to lose weight, because it sets up people for failure, and it doesn't give them any tools for how to do it, which is why I never tell people you should lose weight anymore. But having said that, I love New Year's resolutions. I love the idea of rebooting and reflecting. So I think it's an opportunity to think about, what can I do that gives me better emotional and physical health? For me, that was emptying. This is how I started, was realizing that I couldn't have cookies in my house any more than when I stopped smoking a gazillion years ago, I couldn't have cigarettes in my house.
Wait a minute. So how are you a doctor who smoked?
Oh, well, I'm a dinosaur, you'll remember. Like when I was a resident, we could smoke in the hospital.
Yeah.
And B, that's what I did when I'd be waiting for a baby to be born at night, to keep myself from going in and examining her too often and getting too anxious. The day I got pregnant, which is my ladies' room story, was the day I thought, well, that's child abuse. I have to stop that now. But it's harder with food. We have to eat food. We can't just stay away from cigarettes. So it really takes some, not just effort, but thinking about what do I want to do that will give me a success. And each day I want one success, whether it's skipping that aisle in the grocery store or not getting into an argument with a toxic relative who I know I can't, have any other outcome with.
Yeah, let me know when you figure out how to prevent that.
I'm working on it, Donica. That might be a
That'll
while.
be the next book.
That might be.
I did figure out, though, how to avoid that aisle in the grocery store. This is my big tip. And I do have a lot of orthopedic issues myself, and an orthopedic injury I've been struggling with for a long time. So as a result of that, I started doing grocery shopping online. And when you do, and so my grocery store, you can order the groceries online, and either they can deliver it or you can go pick it up at the store and they put it right into your car. So therefore, and what I said is I'm not only making better choices because I'm deliberately ordering online and making choices and not walking through the aisle. So I'm really just getting what's on my list. But the other thing is I'm saving a lot of money because I'm not doing those impulse buys.
And you never buy celery as an impulse buy, right?
Celery has to be on the list.
It has to be on the list. And you're saving all that time, and you can use that to take a walk.
Well, in my case, it's avoiding the walking. So that's the advantage for me from an orthopedic standpoint.
Got it.
But from a health standpoint, there are also all these other advantages to just making that one little change. And so I view that as like changing your perspective or changing your habits. So I guess that's part of the mindfulness element of this as well.
A huge part. Because habits are just bundled behavior. When I finished a meal, I wanted a cookie. They went together.
I always want a cookie.
Well, there is that, but that too is no, that's the point. That's the point, Donica. I always want a cookie, but there's something else I want more.
And what is that?
I want to stop the self-loathing tape in my head that played when I would enter the cookie circle of hell. Here's the cookie circle of hell. That's
what you should have called the book, The Cookie Circle of Hell.
Actually, it's interesting what I did call the book and what the publisher ended up calling the book.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Most people don't know.
Because to me, the permanent weight loss plan sounds like a book about death, but that's okay. The cookie circle of hell is, I want a cookie. Okay, eat the cookie, and now I've become a shark that has tasted blood, and I want 8 more cookies.
Right.
So I might eat 1 more, I might eat 3 more, but whatever it is, I then reproach myself. I say I have no willpower, no self-control. I'm going to eat nothing but steamed broccoli for the next 2 days. And then I feel right. And then I feel so bad for myself for being so sad that how do I soothe myself? With a cookie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
or a box of cookies. And then if you give a moose a muffin, he'll want a glass of milk to go with it.
Precisely.
So I just wrote down Cookie Circle of Hell because that's what I'm actually going to call this episode. Is the Cookie Circle of Hell.
You can. In the book, it's called the Comfort Food Circle of Hell. But for you and me, it's cookies. Let's go with it. That's our relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually live with a man who is the only person I have ever met who can eat 1 cookie and be completely satisfied. And I always marvel at that.
Well, I was married to that man. I was married to him. And you know what? I was pretty resentful.
Mhm.
that he was thin without trying, that he could eat one cookie, that he loved physical exercise. I was really kind of hostile about it. And guess what? The love of my life, got brain cancer. I
I,
thought, really? What's luck, Janice? You want to feel sorry for yourself because you can't eat everything you want? Because you can't have all the cookies you want? So there you go. And that's not how I feel about eating, but it does inform how I feel about I want a cookie. What I want more than that is to be physically and emotionally vibrant as much as I'm capable of in my
so
old decrepit state.
it's interesting that you brought up your husband's situation with brain cancer, and I'm very sorry to hear that. But it reminds us to make a very important point, and that is not every medical problem has to do with diet and exercise, and
Correct.
brain cancer is one of them. I actually also had a very interesting conversation with Bob Harper once. He was the
Uh-huh.
trainer on The Biggest Loser, and I love
Uh-huh.
him. I met him about 2 months after he had his massive heart attack,
Hmm.
and he was doing great. And I said to him, people must ask you all the time, how do you, Bob Harper, who has this perfect diet, perfect
Hmm.
physique, perfect exercise, have a massive heart attack? What do you
Yes.
say to them? And he had such a great answer. He said, because I have a great diet and exercise
Hmm.
program, that's how I survived a massive heart attack.
I agree. And
And
he
the other
might have
way
had
he
it
survived
20
a
years
massive heart
earlier.
attack is when he had it, he was on the elliptical machine at a gym, and the guy on the next elliptical machine next to him was an emergency room physician, and they had a defibrillator in the gym. So he also said, I will never again work out at a gym that doesn't have
Wow.
a defibrillator.
Wow.
And I was telling somebody else this story, and he said, yeah, but what about saying I'm never going to work out at a gym unless there's an ER doctor on the next elliptical?
Good luck finding that gym. But he also may have had a heart attack 20 years earlier had he not
Absolutely.
been healthy. So, you know, when I talk to people about especially older people, about eating better, living longer, if their response to me is, well, you got to die sometime, I couldn't agree more. But I don't want to have this slow, gradual, awful decline. I want to be on that elliptical machine and drop dead when I'm 90. That's what I want. And I'm going to take care of myself so that there's a possibility for that, so that I can take a long hiking trip with my kids, which I did not long ago. And how lucky am I that they wanted to do that?
That's the
Young
best
women
part.
who are 30 years
That's
old.
that's the best part. I always cherish that. I always cherish that. So everybody's dying for specific tips for you.
Sure.
Very
Sure.
specific tips. So
I
I
will
guess
give you
tip number one is don't let the cookies come in the house.
yeah, don't set yourself up for failure. Um, that's number one. Number two is the most important for me is planning ahead.
Mhm.
I don't eat anything without having planned ahead of time what that's going to be. And that helps me particularly when I go out to eat or go to parties or it's a holiday. I don't want to sit in a corner on Thanksgiving gnawing on a carrot stick. Really, let's be, I want to enjoy myself too. But I decide ahead of time, okay, how much stuffing am I going to have? How many glasses of wine am I going to have? Am I going to have half a piece of pumpkin pie and share it? Or am I going to have 3 pieces because it's Thanksgiving and I want to do that? That's what I do. But there's no negotiation about it. I've been asked if that feels rigid. To me, it feels calming because I'm not having this battle within myself. I want to eat that. I shouldn't eat that. I did eat that. I hate myself for eating that. That's just not part of the equation. So that's one. I
Thanksgiving
plan
is a
ahead.
great example because we refer to Thanksgiving as a gateway holiday for,
That's right.
for
But
people to
here's what
take that.
Thanksgiving is not.
Mhm.
It's not a surprise party.
Right.
You can plan. You can plan. And then you eat what you've planned and you enjoy every single bite. Enjoy it. And then ideally, at the end of the day, well, not ideally, definitely you congratulate yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. You did it. You stuck with your plan. Ideally, what you'll then do at the end of the day is kind of write a list of every good decision you made, every good action, because then you feel that great feeling of success and it builds on each other.
That would be a great thing for
one
people
another.
to do who are keeping gratitude journals.
I love gratitude
and
journals.
I
did
love
one.
what you said about self-care earlier. So I want to encourage
Mhm.
everybody who's on social media to use the hashtag self-care and to share all of their success tips that they have with actually caring for themselves and loving themselves.
I love that idea. I
You know,
love
before we started talking, we were talking a little bit about clutter. And there's this
it.
wonderful woman who has a blog and a website, and she calls herself Fly Lady, FLY Lady.
Uh-huh.
And FLY stands for Finally Loving Yourself. And what she
Wow.
talks about, she had a great book. Actually, I should have her as a guest on this podcast. She talks about the connection between clutter in your home and clutter in your environment, as well as body clutter. And that was actually the name
Interesting.
of her book, was Body Clutter. And I just thought that whole gestalt was very interesting, that most people, when they get their environment in order, starting at the pantry,
Mm-hmm.
they also can get
My
more.
pantry.
I'm not talking about your pantry. I'm just talking about everybody has a generic pantry. And every show I've ever seen with a nutritionist or a physician, any television show where they're trying to help people lose weight, the first thing they do is they go with a hefty bag to the pantry.
Yes.
And
Yes.
throw out half
Yes.
the stuff in there.
Yes. Because if it's there, there will be a time, I guarantee, for me, for everyone, where you say, to hell with this. And if those cookies are in the pantry, they're going to get eaten. Maybe all of them in one day. Is one or one evening. I've been there. I've seen that movie.
Yeah.
Donica, there's something you said that I do want to address specifically, which is a very difficult term for a lot of people, and that's the concept of loving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For so many people, that sounds not just hokey, but impossible. And I'm okay with that. I say, can you at least thank yourself? Respect your body, because your body got you out of bed today. Mm-hmm. Your brain is working, your eyes are working, your ears are working because you're reading this or listening to this podcast. Just show it a little respect. If not love, at least that, because it is doing all that for you and it does deserve your attention, your care.
And why do people loathe themselves so much? Where did that come from? And how do we stop that cycle?
Well, part of it is our culture, where you look at what you think is a Save the Children ad, and it's actually a fashion model. So there is that. There, for most people, the shame part starts very young, usually at home, often other kids, and it goes on from there. People who are heavy have lower educational potential, work potential, partnering potential, and people have described aptly, I believe, body shaming as one of the last acceptable forms of stigma.
Well, actually, that was the very first episode we did on our podcast. Was
really?
On fat shaming with a young woman, Sarah Gaines, who is a fitfluencer, a fitness trainer. And she talked about how she personally was fat shamed on doing a television show, even though she is in fabulous shape and probably a size 2 to 4. But it just didn't appear that way in this particular television show.
Incredible.
And she got, all of this criticism on social media that, who was she to be doing a fitness segment when she wasn't, razor thin.
Well, you can tell all your listeners and readers, because you can see me, I am not gaunt. So, it's relative, number one. It's all around us. But there's also very good evidence that the worst fat shaming damage is done by people to themselves. Mm-hmm. So I can't change all of our culture. I can change how I interact with my patients, and I hope I can convince my readers to stop doing it to themselves, because they do have control over that. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
So homework is good, and you gave people the homework
Yes.
of first writing down at the end of the day
Yes.
what you did well, what
Yes.
your victories were, what
So
your
we've got planning.
yes,
We've
planning
got
number two.
successes, measuring. So those are the small goals and measuring successes, so that every day you have some good feelings about how you did this. So those are important. In terms of actual food, I have two things to say, one of which everyone knows probably by now. Eat real food.
Mhm.
Don't eat stuff that comes out of a box. I don't care if you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, or weight is not at all an issue in your life. Eat real food. And we could do 100 podcasts on all the reasons for that. So people know that. But here is a tip that helps me, that my patients have found invaluable. When I sit down to eat a meal, it might be, say it's some fish and maybe some whole grains and vegetables. I eat all my green vegetables first. I have a huge portion, or I have vegetable soup or salad beforehand, a huge amount of vegetables. I'm a high volume eater. That's not going to change. And if I do try to be a low volume eater, I'm going to be deprived. And if you feel deprived, your chance of success is 0%. So I don't want to feel deprived. I eat an enormous amount of vegetables, and that does a few things. One is I'm eating the most healthy, least calorie dense food first. So that's great. The other thing is that by eating it first, it buys me time. It buys me time for my stomach and my brain to register I'm less hungry. So then I'm not so eager to eat the more calorie dense or the less healthy food. So
Right.
I eat all my
It takes about 20 minutes for the
It does.
stomach to send the brain that
Right.
signal that
Correct.
we are feeling full. And that satiety signal is largely based in many people on volume as
Correct.
opposed to calories.
Correct.
We had a great nutritionist on in a previous episode, and what she recommended, Jeannie Petrucci, which I thought was very clever, is she recommended, envisioning your plate, and 75% of your plate should be vegetables. So I thought that was a very
Wow.
specific.
I do 2/3, 1/3, 1/3, but her way is fabulous.
Mhm.
Fabulous.
And that was how she recommended. The specific question I asked her was, "How do you handle a buffet? When you go up to the buffet
Yeah.
line."
We deal with that in the book a lot.
Very specific strategy. I want to hear what your recommendations were.
Sure.
But her recommendations were, you plan. So you say, I'm only going to the line once.
Uh-huh.
And you fill 75% of your plate with vegetables. And then the rest is whatever you're going to have. Then you sit down and you don't get up again.
We have a slightly different plan, but on the same principle. We are a 2-plate buffet eaters.
Okay.
We fill up a plate with crudités, and we eat them while we're looking at the rest of the buffet. We walk around eating our crudités and then make our decisions. Mm-hmm. Then we do exactly what your guest recommended, which is to fill our plate mostly with vegetables, 1 plate, and that's it. And then enjoy it. And then congratulate yourself, and ideally write it down later.
Yeah, I love the congratulations part and the writing it down later. I'm also loving the specific tips. So we have time for a couple more. What is the number one top tip that your patients seem to resonate with after the writing it down, the planning, the cleaning out the pantry, and not letting the cookies on the premises?
That they deserve this, that they no longer put themselves last. If that means that their family has ice cream when they go out to eat because it's not good for you to have ice cream in the house, so be it. If that means that there's no soda in the house, and I don't think soda should even be legal in people's houses, but that's, again, another topic.
You and Michael Bloomberg.
Well, he and I agree on that. Oh, and many other things at this point in our political life. That you don't go last. It's not fair to you. And it's also not fair to let go unsaid fat shaming comments that are disguised as quote unquote advice or support, such as, I thought you said you weren't going to eat that. Or, are you really going to wear that dress? And I think it's appropriate to say that hurts my feelings and isn't helping me. Please don't do that again. I think it's important for people to give themselves permission to not being criticized and shamed in that way. Shame is so big.
It's big. The challenge, I think, is for people who love and care about you, who want to give help and support and input and don't know how to do that. And quite honestly, there aren't that many great ways to do that. Because if you're feeling insecure and if you're feeling sensitive and if you're feeling shamed and guilty, anything that is about your weight or anybody else's weight is going to feel like a sting or a barb.
I agree. And so it may be that you need to ask people, please don't make food or related comments or say anything about what I'm eating. Having said that, it would help me so much if you supported me in not having these healthy trigger foods in the house. It would help me so much if you didn't say that the only restaurant you liked was the Cheesecake Factory.
I love the Cheesecake Factory.
We all love the Cheesecake Factory. It would help me so much.
And you know what's awesome about the cheese? And I don't eat cheesecake. I just don't like it. So that's one of the things I have been intrinsically.
This interview just derailed. I can see. Okay.
But the bread at the Cheesecake
Factory
is amazing.
So what's a way to deal with that if you go to the Cheesecake Factory?
I can't go there.
Okay. That's something you need to know. Another way that some people can do, people that I'm not related to in any way genetically, would say, I'm going to go to the Cheesecake Factory and have a piece of bread. And for me, it's just a gateway drug.
See, right. And I think that's the thing that people really have to distinguish for themselves, because there are people who can say, I'm just going to have one piece.
Yes.
But then there are people like me who have to say, I need an invisibility shield.
Right.
I physically cannot eat one piece of bread. If I have one piece of bread, I need to have more than one piece of bread.
And I'm one of those people. We need to know who we are.
Or I laugh at dietitians who tell you that a serving of pasta is the size of your fist.
Right.
Which is what a proper serving of pasta is.
A gorilla's fist, maybe.
Right. I can't eat that little pasta. So I have to just not eat it.
Or what I do is spiralized zucchini, which tastes like spiralized zucchini. But if you do 2/3 zucchini and 1/3 pasta, it's pretty terrific.
I've done that too.
You can work out these things, yeah. But you need to recognize what is support for you, and to feel you can't always advocate with everyone. You can't, but you should always be able to feel that you are entitled to. And if it doesn't work out, it's not your fault. It's not your.
What are some of the surprising lessons you learned from your patients in this process?
The surprising lessons were ones we learned together, which was how freed up our brains were by not thinking about food and what I should eat, shouldn't eat, wanted to eat, shouldn't have had, and now I have to punish myself. And so that's all freed up space for much more delightful thoughts, which is another piece of my specific advice, is Every time you notice, and this we get from cognitive behavioral therapists who are amazing, every time you notice yourself thinking something negative, harmful, destructive toward yourself, stop that. Replace that thought. And it doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't happen even often at first, but it becomes another habit that you develop. We started to talk about habits before. You come home, you're exhausted, you open the refrigerator, you grab a fork and start stabbing, and then maybe you see there are some chips in the cupboard, so you eat them on your way to the den to open your computer to open Facebook. Mm-hmm. You can change the habit. It takes work, but that's what habits are, bundle behaviors that have to be perfected over time. You walk in the house, you grab an apple as you walk to your bedroom, to put on your sneakers, to go outside, to walk for 30 minutes. That's the new habit when you come home from work. Maybe that doesn't work for you. Then find something else. That's an exploration. It's kind of an interesting adventure. And that's what I learned from my patients, is we learn from one another what worked, what didn't. And it didn't mean we failed. It means it didn't work.
So actually, you just said something really very kind of light bulb opening for me about this idea of new habits. So maybe instead of talking about New Year's resolutions, we need to talk about new habits that people can create. And if I think about habits that I tried to do, myself that have worked, I remember when Oprah was talking about this years ago, about not eating after dinner.
Yes.
And I probably at that time consumed most of my calories after dinner. And now that's one of my habits. It's just after dinner, I have my cup of tea and we're done.
And Oprah was right for many reasons. One is after dinner, we're more tired. When you're tired, once again, celery's not going to do it. Also, there's now scientific evidence with regard to intermittent fasting that having many hours between dinner and breakfast is great for your metabolism. So you're exactly right. Pardon me?
Or dinner and lunch. Some people who are talking about intermittent fasting are, I was really a big believer in breakfast being the most important meal of the day. And reading a lot of the literature on intermittent fasting has been very, very intriguing.
We have a whole section of the book on breakfast. Children should have breakfast, period. For adults, maybe not.
And pregnant women.
Pregnant women, absolutely. Thank you.
Or nursing women.
Shame on me, a former obstetrician. Shame on me. But for the rest of us, it's actually not necessarily the case. If I eat breakfast, I'm hungrier for the rest of the day. Yeah. And Jay discovered the same thing. So, whatever's right for you.
So I love breakfast and I love breakfast food. And so what it just occurred to me when I was reading about the intermittent fasting is I can have breakfast at 12 o'clock.
Yep.
I don't have to have lunch. I could have breakfast food for dinner.
I do.
I love eggs. Love my eggs. So that's great. Anyway, I could talk to you about this all day long, but we do have to wrap up. But before I let you go, I want you to tell me your In the Ladies' Room story. Because as you know, I ask every guest, what was the most unique, interesting, different, or memorable thing or experience that you ever had in a ladies' room, anywhere?
Well, here's my story, Donica. I went through menopause when I was 30.
Oh, wow.
Very young. It wasn't shocking. My mother had been 36, a lot of autoimmune disease in my family. And when I was 34, my husband and I married. He knew. He was fine with it. We both had our careers. We had our dog. We were happy. About a year or two later, I got sick. And I was getting sicker. And I thought I might have hepatitis. I was just exhausted, nauseated. I was walking to the office one morning. A bus went by and I threw up into the bushes. And I thought, I'm an obstetrician and these symptoms are very familiar. So I brought a little pregnancy test kit into the ladies' room, called my husband and asked him if he was sitting down. And our two daughters are...
I guess it wasn't menopause.
Right. So there you go.
Well, that is a great story. And amazingly, you were actually the first one to ever share a ladies' room story about taking a pregnancy test.
Really?
Yes, I'm very surprised. And we've
I
had
am
all kinds of
too.
other
I
amazing
am
stories
too. Well,
about
that's
in the
my
ladies' room.
story. That's my ladies' room story.
Well, that is a wonderful story. And I presume that story had a very happy ending.
It did for everyone.
That is wonderful.
In our next conversation, I'll tell you about my second delivery, which was at home by accident.
Hey,
But that's for another day.
that's every
That's a funny story.
OBGYN's nightmare.
Actually, it was the funniest day of my life. It wasn't a nightmare.
All right, now you have to tell us.
Well, oh my goodness, you don't have time for this.
I'm making time.
The short story.
Executive decision.
All right.
The Reader's Digest version.
My water bag broke. I knew I had plenty of time. I emptied the dishwasher, took the dog out for a walk, and I had one contraction that was astonishingly painful. Woke up my husband, said, get our 3-year-old dressed. Let's go. And then things seemed to go too quickly.
Were you at term?
Yes, it was the day before my due date. I had been at bed rest for 3 months for blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And now was my due date. You know that story.
I do. That's what I did with my first pregnancy.
We start to get into the car, and I said, I'm having the baby now. And my husband, the Harvard button-down lawyer, said, Janice, I'm sure we have time to get to the hospital. I said, you know what, David, I really don't care what you think. So I said, call the paramedics. He said, what's the phone number? I said, go with 911 and see what happens. I turned on.
That's like, what's the number for 911?
Yeah, exactly. I rewound, because it was in the day of VHS tapes, Mary Poppins from my daughter, so she would be occupied, gave her a new box of cookies, put a blanket in the dryer to warm it up. Impressive.
That was very good thinking.
I went into my room, and these 2 boys who claimed they were paramedics walked in. I was at that point delivering the head, and I said, if you've got an epidural, I'll take it. Delivered the baby. They drove me to the hospital because I didn't want to have the placenta at home and ruin the bed. And took me to the hospital. I delivered the placenta. I had to wait a while for a room. They took me upstairs, and I had a roommate. She said, how was your delivery? And I said, it was okay, because no one wants to hear your labor lasted 20 minutes.
Yeah, especially me.
She said to me, do you know there's a doctor here who's so stupid that she delivered her baby at home because she didn't even know she was in labor? So that's the story, Donica.
That is a great story. I'm so glad we made the extra time for it. And I'm so glad that we were able to welcome you into the ladies' room.
You're a delight.
Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.